on the ancient philosophy, and as an important book on Socrates and Wittgenstein, and political implications of this relationship. Has recently coordinated a research project by the Academy of Finland on Freud, and today he is going to speak about the relationship between Wittgenstein and pyrrhonism. He has written extensively on this topic, and looking forward to hear what you are going to speak about.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and thanks also for the great topic. I will do two things. First, I will discuss some issues without presenting something based on a particular paper, and then I will present a summary of a recent paper, still unpublished paper on Socrates and Wittgenstein. Because I will do less on pyrrhonism because Nuno is doing pyrrhonism today, so we can discuss this connection with his paper. I think pyrrhonian skepticism and Wittgenstein is a great topic. But let me give a few words of context. First, if we speak about Wittgenstein skepticism from the point of view of Wittgenstein research, we have a particular problem which we need to address, which is the fact of recent scholarship. We have two very big discussions of this topic. One around Kripke and the other around Cavell. And it seems to me that no matter how good these discussions on Kripke's contribution and Cavell's contribution are 1980, late 1970s, both these contributions have been very stimulating for Wittgenstein research. But it seems to me that they have lost, in Wittgenstein scholarship, what's really important in the relation between Wittgenstein and skepticism has got lost in the Kripke-Cavell reception. And I will explain what it is. This is my first point. The thing that gets lost is the unity of Wittgenstein's philosophy. Because if we think of Kripke and Cavell as defining how Wittgenstein relates to skepticism, we see Kripke discussing Wittgenstein from the point of view of epistemic skepticism, as if there would be a problem with theoretical philosophy and meaning skepticism, which is separable from the Cavellian thematic, which is the moral and existential thematic. So in two discussions, two kinds of skepticism. We have the epistemic or semantic skepticism on the Kripke side, and with the moral and existential skepticism on the Cavell side. So we have the question of the reality of meaning, which is the Kripke topic, and we have skepticism about the reality of the other, which is, in Cavell's nice phrase, the other part of the trajectory. And then what we lose is what happened in the 16th century when there was the modern reception of pyrrhonian skepticism. We repeat the figure around 1600 when, in the 16th century, when pyrrhonian skepticism came back to the European imagination. In Montaigne, and through Montaigne, there was a concern about knowledge about the world and ourselves, about mathematics and morality, which was one enterprise. But around 1600, in Shakespeare's and Descartes' reception of Montaigne, we have the bifurcation. So we have Shakespeare's existential reception of the pyrrhonian skepticism, and we have Descartes' epistemic reception of the pyrrhonian skepticism. So we get the bifurcation of the modern imagination into the theoretical and practical realm. And I think if we accept this bifurcation, as we do through Kripke and Cavell, they inscribe this bifurcation, this division of philosophy into Wittgenstein himself. then I think we lose sight of the real potential of skepticism in Wittgenstein. And so this is my first point, that there's a difficulty with scholarship. I need to come back. A topic we thought we had already done well with in Wittgenstein scholarship actually is, we have done tremendous harm to the topic in splitting it, dividing it like this. This kind of a programmatic suggestion. It's not an argument, but it's a perspective I suggest. That's one thing. And I want to, so I think there's a real drama into the scholarship in how we address our issue. But there's real drama in a much deeper and wider sense in terms of the constellation of Western culture today. I mean, we have I won't describe the crisis we're in. I mean, in Portugal you feel a certain kind of Euro crisis very sort of concretely in your day-to-day. But that's of course linked to the crisis of progress, the climate change thing, how that the limits of debate, the loss of meaning, the Weberian topic, Nietzsche's Weber's topic, loss of meaning. So there's a multiple crisis of modernity which we're facing. And philosophy responded, 100 years ago, philosophy responded to the loss of meaning and the loss of freedom that Weber and Nietzsche and Dostoevsky had diagnosed. Philosophy responded by trying to put philosophy on a new footing. So we had these two great programs. We had the Frege-Russell Young Wittgenstein program of a linguistic turn. And we had the Husserl-Heidegger program of a phenomenological turn in philosophy. So philosophy would regain or would recapture the promise of enlightenment by placing enlightenment on a new path. So this was the enterprise of philosophy 100 years ago. Now what happened between 1900 and 1950 was that this enterprise, the Frege-Russell program and the Husserl-Heidegger program of regaining self-confidence for Western culture as a rational enterprise, this imploded in the self-criticism of these agendas. And what we have after the Second World War, we have a gradual decline in the ambition of philosophy. Philosophy is giving up the idea, the dream that in philosophy we can, I mean, if 100 years ago, philosophy came to Western culture saying, look, through philosophy we can redeem the Enlightenment dream that truth can make us free. Now that's redemption, that's program redemption, the idea of philosophy as a heroic presence that helps us address the roots of the cultural dissatisfaction and the roots of our multiple cultural crises. This program got lost, and what we have today, we have two kinds of responses, two kinds of defeat of reason. One is neo-pragmatism, which is the big thing in academic philosophy, the Anglo-Saxon world, where the big money and the big power is. We have philosophy retreating into the positions conserving science. Most spectacularly this happens in philosophy of mind, an area which I've been working on the last few years, where the neuroscientific paradigm is seen as the new, most interesting work we can have on the human soul, and philosophy is just a subservient to this scientific reorientation to the study of man. So that's one. So neo-pragmatism says, oh, we can't. Neo-pragmatism says, in epistemology, foundations are always obscure. There was weak. The best we can have is weak transcendentalism or some kind of, we withdraw from the promise that you can really assess knowledge claims in philosophy. The only thing we can do is we can contribute a bit to that self-reflection. And on the other hand, so that's one. So philosophy becomes a part of science. People even speak of, I don't know if it's been discussed in Portugal, but in England they discuss it, in the US, not in Finland, but experimental philosophy, empirical philosophy, this kind of thing. So very strange lowering of ambition through the neo-pragmatic turn. When Richard Rorty is the decisive figure. Richard Rorty defines, he brought out the secret dream, or the dream of giving up the dream. So Rorty is the main figure in this debate. and the consequences of rorty which we see now in analytic philosophy. And the other part is then this whole postmodern thing, where you say, oh, we know that there's no absolute, so we have to be Lacan is I think the major figure here, the most typical figure, that there can be no foundation, there can be no absolute, so we're building on nothing. We're building a case on nothing. So how can you build a case on nothing? So this withdrawal, what you have is you have a nostalgia for great philosophy, but you really abdicate reason. You say, we know that we can't place reason at the center of culture. So what we can do is we can write our nostalgic reflections about the demise of culture, but we can't step in and try to redeem the promise of enlightenment. And it's in this context, my claim is that we can, with the help of Wittgenstein, with reading Wittgenstein as a skeptic with the moral and the epistemic agenda are one, we can find access to a canon of Western philosophy, which is different from the one that leads us from Plato to postmodernism, or from Plato to teleopragmatism. What I suggest to you, and this is the wild pragmatic ambition, but I submit it in all honesty, as an earnest proposal, that through Wittgenstein we can find access to a redefinition of the Western philosophical canon, in which Socrates, pyrrhonian skepticism, Montaigne, Hamann, Kierkegaard, Emerson, later people like Tolstoy and Gandhi appear as the defining figures of a kind of enlightenment which is not captured by this division between the epistemic and the existential agendas and problems. So this is, in this context, I want to place my reflections, or this context inspires and gives me an urgent need to address the question, in what sense we can read Wittgenstein as a skeptic. So this, I'm still in the discussion part, but I think it's important that we, I wanted to share this with you because just to confess my dissatisfaction with the withdrawal of philosophy from its ambitious self-understanding. That's one. A second point in my of context is that it's very difficult for us to take seriously the idea that Wittgenstein needs to be placed in relation to tradition. And that's why I think I'm happy to be here, because I share with my friends here in Portugal the idea that we really need to take Wittgenstein seriously as a philosopher who's aware of his role in history. This was underplayed by a great teacher in Finland, Göran Henrik von Wright, who succeeded Wittgenstein as professor of philosophy in Cambridge, wrote in the 50s very important 50s, 60s, very influential comments on Wittgenstein and contributed to the first wave of reception. Von Wright and G.E. Moore shared, and Anscombe as well, they shared the view that Wittgenstein represents a kink in the tradition of Western philosophy. That he somehow, that what he does is extraordinary and different. And they made it very difficult. So that's one, that in the first wave of reception, Wittgenstein is defined as somebody who is not really part of the tradition. Second, Wittgenstein is received most eagerly and widely in the analytical world, which is usually not very historically aware. And thirdly, Wittgenstein himself was not a scholar, as we know. And it's easy to get the impression that his philosophy is sort of unaware and not responding to the larger canvas of the philosophical tradition. So we have a triple obstacle to taking seriously the proposition that what Wittgenstein is doing may stand actually in a very deep and important sense of continuity with the great skeptical tradition of Western philosophy. So it's an upward battle to try to argue that if we read Wittgenstein as a Socratic and Pyrrhonian philosopher, we get to something that's really deep in him and that he himself maybe wanted to carry forward. so we have these obstacles, many obstacles. And then I think in 1987, when something interesting happens, is when Wallgren brings out his book on Wittgenstein, and in the last chapter, Robert Wallgren suggests that Wittgenstein should be seen as a pyrrhonian skeptic. So then that seems to open the possibility, and people get interested. Oh, this is a new thing in Wittgenstein research. In what sense is it pyrrhonian skeptic? But when Wallgren introduces this idea, which I think is a very, very important idea, it had been mentioned by Mates in 1964, but nobody had paid notice as far as I know. But when Wallgren, in 1987, Wallgren is a successful philosopher, his book is read by many people, he suggests a pyrrhonian skeptic. The message of Wallgren is that he's a pyrrhonian skeptic in what I think is a very shallow sense of one who destroys everything. This is Wallgren's own words. Wittgenstein is like the pyrrhonian philosophers, one who destroys everything. So let me say that I think this is the undergraduate textbook version of pyrrhonian skepticism, where Pyrrho is the defining pyrrhonian skeptic. They don't normally speak about this. And what Pyrrho says is that we have this, he has this indeterminacy thesis that we should, because of the indeterminacy of things, we should say about each single thing that it no more is than is not, or both is and is not, or neither is or is not. So we should have this withdrawal of judgment, or suspension of judgment, and we have that, we'll be free from the worries of philosophers. This is the idea, this is Wallgren's idea of what kind of conclusions we should draw from Wittgenstein. I mean, that is this kind of primitive pyrrhonian skeptic. Now, it's quite strange, because if you have this, if this is what's central to pyrrhonian skepticism, then the paradox is so huge that it's difficult to avoid not to see it. And the paradox that we have the opinion that we should have no opinion. So what kind of, it doesn't seem like a very deep and promising variety of skepticism. So if that's everything that we get from Wittgenstein, we should have the opinion that we could have no opinion. If this, his pyrrhonian skepticism, how can that be important? And how can Wittgenstein be an important philosopher? But still, so when Wallgren makes this, I think, very interesting move, that he says, look, this guy is a pyrrhonian skeptic, he also defines the pyrrhonian skepticism in a way which makes it uninteresting. So I think that's something new appears, and in the moment when it appears, it's also somehow belittled to such an extent that the enterprise doesn't become important. So for this reason, I have written in a book in which Nuno also has an article, an essay. I've written a piece on Wittgenstein and pyrrhonian skepticism, trying to argue that we have three varieties of pyrrhonian skepticism. One with Pyrrho, the other one with the academic skeptics and Anisidides, and the third with the Sextus. And it's only with Sextus and Sextus Empiricus variety of pyrrhonian skepticism, it's only there that the deep affinity with Wittgenstein and with Socrates comes out. I won't explain that. Let me just say that there are two things. Then Sextus deals, I think, in an extremely innovative and subtle way with this paradox of skepticism, that we have the opinion, we have no opinion. One is, I think this is so beautiful, maybe I mentioned later, but I mentioned that in the first paragraph of Sextus's Outlines of Pyrrhonism, you have, depending on translation, that you have a verbatim passage that appears in the first paragraph in Wittgenstein's own text in the Philosophical Investigations. And this is the phrase, as it seems to me. So what we discuss in philosophy are things as they seem to me, as they appear to me. That's one move, that we present stuff for consideration. We don't present opinions. We present arguments, positions, observations, points of comparison for study. The other, so that's one technique Sextus uses to make and what he does, the other technique he uses is that is the dialectical technique. That current skeptic doesn't start with his own opinions. He considers the contributions others make. So he starts from a dialogical position. And having done so, and this is I think the most beautiful thing in the introduction to Sextus, to learning skepticism, is that he says we have in philosophy three traditions. One is the, no, I don't have the words, I haven't got it. We have three traditions. One are the positive philosophers who argue for doctrines. Then we have the dogmatic philosophers who claim capacity to show that all the doctrines are false or can't be proven. And these are people who have opinions. So that's fine, and we can accept, so we can respect this philosophy, but we are not interested in that, because we are skeptics. And skeptics, of course, in means the people who continue to search. So Sextus doesn't compete with positive or negative dogmatism. He says, it's all fine, we can respect it's an honorable way of doing philosophy, but we are into something else, we are searching. We're the people who still search. And this is, I think, maybe the most important way in which the point of access to Wittgenstein, that if we read Wittgenstein, I'll come back to that, but if we read him as somebody who is engaged in an enterprise which is defined by the ambition to find knowledge, then we lose his really deep contact with the skeptical tradition. Wittgenstein is not engaged in an opposition. He's not creating a tradition which stands in opposition to the achievements of Frege or Russell. He's recreating himself in his later philosophy as one who searches. And one who is not defeated if, at the end of the day, you don't have a doctrine or thesis or results. So these are very huge topics that I wanted to mention, because only if we free ourselves from the idea that skepticism is about destroying can we see the value of Socrates, of Sextus and Wittgenstein. These people are not destroying. These people are searching, which is quite a different enterprise. So Vogel discovers the pyrrhonian skeptic in Wittgenstein and defines him in such a way that he becomes, at the same time, marginal. Because it's not so interesting to be a destructive person. I mean, you wanted to think about Alexandria. But I think this is early 30s. And Wittgenstein becomes a much more, not a constructive, but a searching philosopher in his, as he develops between 1930 and 1936 and 1937. Let me mention that I owe what we always speak around these points. So this is the, let me see if I can, so I think this is a common thing to finish the first part, and maybe if you want we can discuss here, and I don't do the paper. But to finish the programmatic introduction, I think it is fascinating that, to use one word, to define what is the common core, what I think is the core ambition that unites Socrates, Sextus, and Wittgenstein, is the aporia, the aporetic nature of philosophy. That they are not ashamed, they are not presenting the second best, they are not excusing themselves when they identify themselves as people who are not searching for truth. When they are not, when the method is not discursive argument and the goal is not true thesis. These two lacks is not something that they think is something you need to excuse yourself for, because you have something different going on. You have something which is more valuable, perhaps, at least for yourself, more important. If others want to have discursive argument which leads to true thesis, that is, a different ballgame. But it's not out of. And I think in Wittgenstein's case, one of the important things is in the study of development of Wittgenstein we see when he goes from the 1940 notebooks on logic to the war notebooks on the Tractatus, that when he comes back to philosophy's grammar in the early 30s, we see a radicalization of the search for truth, which leads him to an abandoning of the idea that the result is important, and a rediscovery of the way in which there's a unity of a moral search and a distinct search in the conversation about the meaning of our concepts. This is my last slide. This is the program, and I think the program is important because I think there's a lack of inspiring ideas about the liberating power of reason in Western culture today. The fakes are sent, even to the extent that the lack of respect for democracy that we see in Western Europe today. I mean, how Portugal was in many countries, the whole European process. I think one of the remarkable features of the European politics of the last 10, 20 years has been a lack of energy in the democratic response. And that has to do with a loss of the idea that internal connection between human conversation and the promise of enlightenment. That in our conversation, truth can really make us free. And I think these people, Socrates, Sextus, and Wittgenstein, give us resources to see the attractions, see the value of democracy as a rational enterprise. Now, this is the program, and then I have, but it depends on what you want to do with the schedule. We can stop here for discussion, or I can give you a few pages of my Socrates and Wittgenstein paper, whichever you prefer.
I prefer that you give
a few pages.
A few pages, and then we.
This is forthcoming in. This is forthcoming next year in a Belgrade book, but the summary is not forthcoming. So I will take now that's a break. Part 2 begins. So it begins like this. About 5 pages.
Okay.
And you, whatever, then we take a break when you say. When you lift your hand, we take a break. But I'll try to say a few things. I'll come back to this strangeness. I'll start with the strangeness. And maybe just connected with what I said earlier. I think what Kripke and Cavell, in their great contributions 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they somehow managed to make Wittgenstein less strange than he is. And the same, in fact, I have the same problem with Cora Diamond's and James Conan's extremely important therapeutic reading of Wittgenstein. They also domesticate Wittgenstein, make him less strange than he really is. So I want to emphasize the strangeness and start with this. Socrates and Wittgenstein, maybe Sextus as well, but it's not my topic here, are the strangest of heroes in our philosophical canon. They are strange because both used a very simple language and both were sure that they would be understood only by a few. I think these are remarkable similarities. Second, both sought for friendship through philosophy, and both were certain that they would be rejected by many. Third remark, both practiced philosophy as dialogue between different voices about the meaning of concepts. Now, all these three are remarkable features, not shared by most philosophers today. Fourth feature, Socrates and Wittgenstein both thought that the investigation of concepts is an examination of how we should live. Fifth similarity, both claimed that such philosophy may be of the most ambitious kind that we may conceive of. That it does not serve progress of power, that it does not deliver new truth, and that it may still serve wisdom better than any other kind of search for knowledge or truth. And so my claim, as I said in the first in my introductory note, For these reasons, anybody interested in the dialectics of enlightenment, in the relation of the crisis of our times, to the idea that the pursuit of reason will bring progress, for anyone with these interests, the awkward enlightenment optimism of Socrates and Wittgenstein merits attention. So that's how I introduced this paper, and now I want to say a few words about the therapeutic interpretation of Wittgenstein. I guess some of you are familiar with this. There's a decisive achievement in the therapeutic interpretation. I think Lyman and Gordon especially, but also Gordon Baker as the third great representative. They have brought attention to two ideas. One, that Wittgenstein in his philosophy is getting at something other than theories or theses. And two, that what he's getting at does not undermine philosophy. So they are not sharing Vogelian's idea. On the contrary, what the therapeutic interpretation does, they do claim that when we do not go after theories or theses, we are still, we're actually increasing the level of ambition in philosophy. So this, I think, is very important, and actually a very important contribution to contemporary philosophy. But it seems to me that the important later changes in Wittgenstein's work, changes that happened after 1935, cannot be covered, cannot be really seen for the full value if we take the therapeutic interpretation as the final word on Wittgenstein. And this has to do with the conception of philosophy. The essential source for the study of Wittgenstein's later and most mature conception of philosophy is the first part of the philosophical investigations. I think Nuno agrees with me on this point. In our study of this conception of philosophy, we have two main options. One is to read the so-called philosophy chapter in the investigations, so in the remarks 89 to 133, in the first part of the investigations, as a kind of systematic presentation of what philosophy, as Wittgenstein saw it, is. Now, this is, I think, what happens in the therapeutic interpretation. And I think that is not the best way. The other option is to consider the so-called philosophy chapter in close relation to the former presentation and the preface of the investigations. The latter, which I think is the better option, allows us to see that Wittgenstein does not offer the remarks of the philosophy chapter or any remarks in the investigations as remarks authorized by the author and recommended to others. Hence, if we take the second option, we will no longer read the remarks by Wittgenstein, which suggest that philosophy is a kind of therapy that liberates us from illusion as the foundation or methodological basis for further interpretation. Nor will any other individual remark serve us as a basis. Instead, the dialogic style, most notably its polyphonic, or as I now prefer to say, its heteroglossic procedure, and how this fits the remarks of the preface, will be seen as holding keys to the interpretation of Wittgenstein's conception of philosophy. Both polyphony and heteroglossia are Bachtinian terms. The emphasis on the importance of heteroglossia provides some advantages, as I believe, with regard to the therapeutic readings. The idea that philosophy is centrally nourished by illusions of sense, and that philosophy is successful when it liberates us from illusion, that is central to therapeutic readings, will not be rejected, but it will be displaced. It's crucial to the heteroglossic reading to repeat, it's really crucial that we do not assume that the point of any specific remark or set of remarks is that we should identify a view endorsed or recommended by the author. The idea that remarks have a point, for instance, the point of liberating us from the spell of a certain illusion, is problematic. The therapeutic readings, and what gets lost in the therapeutic reading is how radical the Scepticism is, and how definite the text is. The therapeutic readings of Wittgenstein offer to us a Wittgenstein who promises clarity. In this respect, therapeutic readings are more similar to the grammatical and other competing readings of Wittgenstein than they have offered themselves as alternatives to. The very emphasis in therapeutic interpretations on arriving at results results that are not theses, theories, or doctrines, but results concerning what makes sense and what does not make sense, seems to me to domesticate Wittgenstein for the world of academic analytical philosophy in a way that does not cohere with the heteroglossia of his work. It makes Wittgenstein too similar to any philosopher trading in the business of getting things right. In heteroglossic interpretations of Wittgenstein, we need not assume that the mark of success in a philosophical investigation is how well it serves the task of purifying language from nonsense. We will not think that it is a basic idea of Wittgensteinian philosophy that some uses of our words are no uses at all, and that philosophy helps us withdraw uses of words that have no use from circulation. These are typical catchwords in the therapeutic, and these are all quotes from investigations. We will also not say that later Wittgenstein thought that the central goal of philosophy is that our problems go away. For instance, by imploding, in the sense that philosophical investigations elucidate that what we thought was a problem was due to confusion. It may seem then that I will be advancing a reading of Wittgenstein that goes in one of the following directions. And this is how I think that interpreters the difficulty people have in taking heteroglossia seriously. If we take one misreading of polyphonic or heteroglossic understanding of Wittgenstein is this. The first is that of conventionalist or postmodern readings of Wittgenstein. Here the tendency is that we affirm, with any measure of irony or self-reflecting maneuvering that we find appropriate, that with Wittgenstein, and perhaps with Socrates, we can take to heart the unavoidability of accepting a void, a groundlessness of our being. So that's one. So we think that heteroglossia will make Wittgenstein some kind of postmodernism. This was Hacker thought when he read James Conant. And the other mistake is to think that heteroglossic readings of Wittgenstein, the Bakhtinian readings of Wittgenstein, make him some kind of pragmatist. David Bloor is a typical example. Here the claim is, here we claim continuity between Wittgensteinian and Socratic groundlessness with the legacy of analytic philosophy and with the project of defining in a radical realization of Kant's critical term, a fallible, pluralist, post-metaphysical, historically aware idea of reason that plays a moderate but basically affirmative role in the self-understanding of modernity as a progressive enlightenment enterprise. But now with heteroglossic readings, we are not advancing any of this. My suggestion is that there are essential aspects in Wittgenstein's conception of the nexus between freedom and philosophy, between enlightenment and emancipation, that are not captured in any of these ways of appropriating Wittgenstein, the therapeutic, the postmodern, or the pragmatist. And then I think to see what is not captured by these dominating receptions, it's useful to examine the notion that the agreement between Socrates and Wittgenstein, the theoretic nature of philosophy, is the similarity between them that is most remarkable and that also presents the greatest difficulties for us. Aporetic can mean many things. I'm not suggesting that aporetic, that to describe Socrates and Wittgenstein as aporetic philosophers is a code or a cipher that hides a secret. That's not my claim. But when I suggest that we look at Wittgenstein and Socrates from the point of view of aporia, of what they can mean when they claim that they're aporetic philosophers, I think that's an invitation to examination that goes in many directions. And in the paper, I have 7 short chapters on what different senses we can give to the idea that Socrates and Wittgenstein are aporetic philosophers who are not postmodernists, who are not therapists, who are not neo-pragmatists. I will give you at least the first of these. It's very short, and it makes a connection to Sextus. This is really a repetition, but I want to do that. It's half page. Sextus Empiricus distinguishes between 3 kinds of philosophers. Some claim to have discovered the truth. Others, and these are quotes, have asserted that things cannot be apprehended. And the third kind of philosopher are still investigating. Sextus calls these three fundamental kinds of philosophy: the dogmatic, the academic, and the skeptical. There's some repetition, but that's the point. In modern philosophy, skepticism has often been seen as a negative kind of philosophy, one that undermines the ambitions of constructive philosophy. But such negative results are, as I said, from Sextus' point of view, typical of the second type of philosophy, not a skeptical philosophy, namely the academic skepticism. We can think of two kinds of problems and tasks that we may have. And this is very simple now, a very simple introduction to the difference between Sextus and academic skepticism. Some tasks we may have are such that we think that we know what it will be like when the problem is solved or the task accomplished. The building of a bridge or a stream, or the calculation of the probability of winning in the national lottery are examples. Other tasks are such that we do not assume that there will be a clear difference between dealing successfully with the problem or task and not doing so. The task of understanding another person or of learning how to play football or the piano are examples. And I do not suggest that this is a thesis of philosophy of action, that all tasks fall interested in one of these categories, nor that the border between the groups is clear. But it's helpful to see what Sextus is after. Skepticism in Sextus' sense is naturally at home with respect to the second kind of task. The task where there is not a clear difference between dealing successfully with the problem and not doing so. To the extent that philosophers today tend to think, sometimes by instinct, sometimes after reflection, that skepticism in philosophy is bad, that it destroys everything, this attitude itself is a symptom, it seems to me, that they have already accepted an idea of philosophical problems and tasks, according to which they, the philosophical tasks or problems, typically belong to the first type of problem or task just described. As long as that is what we think, and perhaps that is what we want to think, the will and argument connection is very important, then the skepticism that Socrates and Wittgenstein may have in common with Sextus will seem out of place. And it's strange how this kind of very primitive idea, a very primitive dogmatic assumption about what kind of problems of philosophy are, direct the imagination and the discussion about Wittgenstein skepticism in a direction where it's seen as destructive. Well, there's a very natural way of looking at tasks. We think of philosophical tasks as more akin to learning to understand another person than learning to calculate the probability of winning on the lottery. If this is how we see philosophy, then the approach to the skeptic in Wittgenstein will be natural. The approach, the heterodox approach, I suggest. So there's a very simple maneuver, which will pave the way. This is the first chapter. The way to taking seriously the idea that philosophy can be operated and still not be failing its promise to give us enlightenment. That's a very. I thought I would give you the fourth chapter, but that's slightly longer, and I have a sense that I would like to have some time for discussion. So you see what kind of interest I have, and I'm aware that the details are very important, but it's easier for you to read the details in the papers than to listen longer now. So please do.